The clinking of glasses, soft music in the background, and chandeliers shimmering above, it should have been a celebration. My younger brother, Brandon, was getting engaged, and the whole family looked like they belonged in some magazine spread. I had arrived right on time, dressed to blend in, not to stand out. I didn't want the spotlight, I just wanted to be part of it. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, raising my champagne glass and giving Brandon and his fiancée a warm smile, "I'm glad to be part of this special day." "You too." My voice cracked slightly, but I held steady. "Are perfect for each other. I wish you both all the love and happiness the world has to offer." I took a small sip and smiled. That was it. Simple, short, heartfelt. Then came my father's voice, sharp and loud. "You weren't part of this, David. We added you last minute." Laughter scattered across a few tables. I didn't laugh. My smile stayed, but my heart stung. I looked at my dad. He wasn't joking. Then my sister, Tiffany, chimed in, not missing her cue, "Just try not to ruin it like you always do." Her words slapped me harder than I expected. The room felt smaller. Eyes were watching, some amused, some awkward, others just pretending not to notice. I didn't say a word. I simply turned my head, finished the last sip of champagne, and placed the glass down gently. I walked toward the gift table. Sitting there was my envelope, a card with their names written in gold, and inside it, a $5,000 check. No one noticed me slipping it quietly into my jacket. No one asked why I was walking out the door early. And no one even remembered that I was the one who booked this entire engagement venue 6 months ago. Paid for it. Planned most of it. Even coordinated the caterer. But I guess I was still just an afterthought to them. Outside, I stood beside my car, breathing in the crisp air. Calm. Cold. Clear. I took out my phone, opened the event planning app, and scrolled to the payment profile. Every service, venue, DJ, lighting, catering, was booked under my account. My card. My money. I clicked, cancel payment method. A confirmation popped up. I didn't hesitate. I clicked again, remove card from file. Then I made one short call to the venue manager. My voice was low but steady. "Hi, yes. I'd like to cancel the card on file for the Carter engagement tonight. Just let the staff know to pause until payment's updated." She paused, surprised. "Are you sure, sir? The event is ongoing." "I'm sure," I said, then hung up. I looked back toward the glowing hall from the parking lot, music still playing, people still smiling. But not for long. I didn't always feel like the outsider. There was a time, faint and distant, when I actually thought I mattered in our family. Growing up, I was the oldest of 3, and for a while, I believed that meant something. Responsibility. Respect. A voice. But as years passed, it became clear, being the oldest didn't mean being the favorite. It meant being the scapegoat. Brandon, my younger brother, could crash the car and somehow end up with a newer one. Tiffany could miss curfew or talk back, and it would be chalked up to just being a teenager. But me? I once got a C+ in algebra and was grounded for a month. My father told me, "If you can't even handle high school, how do you expect to survive life?" It was always like that. Nothing I did was ever good enough. I graduated early? Must have had easy classes. I landed a job right out of college? You got lucky. Even when I bought my first car with my own money, my dad shook his head and said, "You paid too much. You never think smart." But still, I kept showing up. I helped with Brandon's college move-in day. I paid for part of Tiffany's summer abroad trip when she came up short. I covered our mom's emergency dental bill last year without blinking. I was always the one stepping in quietly, never asking for thanks. And yet, they still made me feel like I was just the background character in their lives. Even the engagement party tonight, Brandon had no clue I was the one who reserved that beautiful lakeside hall. He just thought Dad did it. Of course. Dad took the credit, like he always did. And when I confronted him about it last week, he simply said, "No one cares who pays for what, David. Just be there and behave. Be there and behave." That was my role. I watched Brandon rise, fall, and get saved over and over again. He blew through thousands gambling a few years ago, and Dad bailed him out like it was a parking ticket. He failed out of his first college, and somehow that turned into a gap year to find himself. Meanwhile, when I once asked Dad for help co-signing a loan for my business idea, one I had researched and planned for 6 months, he laughed. Not a chuckle. A full laugh. "I'm not putting my name on something you'll ruin." That one stuck with me. Even tonight, when I gave that short toast, I just wanted to feel like I was part of the family. Like I finally belonged. But my father's cold correction and Tiffany's smug jab reminded me that some people don't want you to belong. They want you to stay in your place. An outsider. A backup plan. An invisible hand that gives but never gets. As I sat in my car, watching the party lights shimmer from the parking lot, I remembered all the years I gave everything and received silence in return. The betrayal wasn't sudden, it was decades in the making. Tonight just put a spotlight on it. And this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. They all left me out of their story, so now, I was going to take back the pen. The week before the engagement party, I was exhausted. Not physically, but emotionally. I had been juggling work, finalizing payments for the venue, confirming the catering menu, and even calling in a favor from a DJ I knew from college, all just to make sure Brandon's special day went off without a hitch. I didn't do it for applause. I didn't even do it for him, really. I did it because deep down, I still held on to this naive hope that maybe, if I kept showing up, kept being useful, my family might finally see me as something more than a shadow. The venue? I booked it 6 months in advance. I used my own credit card and never asked to be paid back. The deposit alone was nearly $5,000. When the venue manager sent me the confirmation, I felt a tinge of pride. This was going to be a beautiful evening. An evening that I had quietly built from the ground up. I imagined Brandon thanking me with a pat on the back, or maybe Dad looking at me, just once, with pride in his eyes. But none of that happened. 2 days before the party, I overheard a phone call. I had dropped by my parents' house to deliver a copy of the catering invoice. I was standing in the hallway when I heard my mom talking to Aunt Linda. "Yes, Brandon's party is this Saturday. Oh, it's all thanks to George. He booked the place, paid for everything. Such a generous father." I froze. I didn't even knock. I just turned around and left. That single sentence echoed louder than any of the "we love yous" I had heard growing up. Dad didn't even correct her. He took the credit, again. That night, I stared at the receipt folder in my apartment, every line item screaming the truth they refused to acknowledge. The venue, the flowers, the deposit for the photographer, every dollar came from my account. My time, my energy, my sacrifices. And they passed it off like I was just a guest. An afterthought. It was one thing to be forgotten. It was another to be erased. And Tiffany? She was no better. Just a week earlier, she had called me to ask for help with her makeup artist payment. "Can you cover it for now, David? I'll pay you back right after the party, I promise." I said yes, of course I did. And I didn't even expect the money back. Because that's how they trained me. To give. And give. And give. But the turning point came the night before the party. I stopped by the venue for one last walkthrough. I met with the manager, who confirmed everything was perfect. Before leaving, I handed her a sealed envelope. "If there's any issue with the payment card tomorrow, cancel everything immediately. Shut it down. No explanations. Just follow the instructions." She raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Understood. I didn't plan on using it. Not yet. But something in my gut told me this party would be my final test. And I wasn't going to leave empty-handed again. The ballroom was glowing in gold. Candles flickered on every table, soft jazz played in the background, and the air was thick with perfume, champagne, and artificial smiles. I stood near the back, holding a glass of sparkling water, watching as the guests mingled, clinking glasses, complimenting Tiffany's dress, praising my father's generosity. Not a single person acknowledged the work I put in. My name wasn't in the printed program. I wasn't even seated at the family table. I kept glancing at my watch, waiting for the moment they'd call on me, maybe to thank me, or just include me. Something. Then the MC tapped the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for toasts. Let's raise a glass to the happy couple. First up, Brandon's older brother, David. I blinked. Wait, me? Brandon looked just as surprised. He leaned over and whispered something to Dad. Dad didn't look happy. He was clearly not expecting me to speak. But I walked up, slow and calm, hiding every ounce of bitterness behind a polite smile. I took the mic, looked around the glittering room, and said, "Glad to be part of this." Before I could continue, my father chuckled into the mic. "You weren't," he said, shaking his head. "We added you last minute. It was your mother's idea." A few awkward chuckles from the crowd. Then Tiffany leaned toward the mic, her voice as cold as glass. "Try not to ruin it." Like always. The ballroom echoed with polite laughter. That was it. I smiled, nodded, and raised my glass. "Here's to family," I said quietly, before stepping off the stage. But I didn't go back to my seat. I walked out the front door. Straight to the parking lot. Pulled up my phone, opened the venue contract I had bookmarked, and hit cancel on the payment card on file. The screen popped up with a confirmation. "Are you sure you want to cancel this card?" I tapped yes. Then I walked to my car, sat inside, and waited. 20 minutes passed. I sipped the last of my drink and looked at my phone. I had missed the first call. Then the second. Then the next 100. By the time I scrolled through, I had 130 missed calls and over 40 text messages. One from Tiffany. The lights went out. The DJ stopped. "What did you do?" Another from my mother. "David, please call me. The venue says payment failed." And finally, one from my father. No words. Just a voicemail. I played it on speaker. "David. You little. I don't know what you did, but you better fix it. Right now." I didn't reply. I just sat there. Silent. Watching as the ballroom lights shut down. The music faded. The guests spilled out into the parking lot, confused, whispering. One by one, I saw them call me. Desperate. Frantic. For the first time in years, they needed me. And I wasn't going to lift a finger. Not anymore. Back in my car, I watched it all unravel like a silent movie. The once elegant venue now looked like a scene from a disaster film. Guests stood outside in their formal clothes, fanning themselves in the summer heat. The ballroom lights were out. The DJ booth was silent. Waitstaff were wheeling away untouched trays of food. Inside my pocket, my phone kept vibrating. I turned it on Do Not Disturb. Let them panic. About 15 minutes later, Tiffany stormed out of the building in her high heels, her perfectly styled hair already frizzing from the humidity. She was screaming at someone on the phone, tears ruining her makeup. Then came my father. Red-faced. Jaw tight. He kicked a trash can so hard it rolled into the hedges. My mother followed, quieter than the rest. Her eyes scanned the parking lot like she was looking for me. And I knew exactly why. She was the only one who remembered what I meant when I said I handled everything. She knew. Brandon tried to calm everyone down, but he looked more like a groomsman in panic than a groom-to-be. He was on the phone with the venue manager, waving his hands, yelling about backup payments and what the hell happened. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered his toast from earlier, when he praised our father for funding everything, like I hadn't been the one who paid the initial deposit, set up the autopay, and handled the venue paperwork. They had erased me from my own efforts. So I erased myself from the bill. It was poetic, really. The venue sent a team member to the front to make an announcement. We apologize for the inconvenience, but due to a payment failure and breach of contract, we are unable to continue hosting this evening's event. Please make arrangements to vacate the premises. Gasps followed. Some people cursed. A few guests started heading to their cars, confused and disappointed. One woman loudly whispered, "What kind of family throws an engagement party they can't even pay for?" That stung. My dad heard it. His head snapped in her direction. He looked embarrassed, enraged, and helpless all at once. Now he understood what it meant to be humiliated in front of a crowd. Tiffany came back inside, trying to salvage whatever dignity she had left, but the DJ was already packing up. The florist was collecting centerpieces. The power had been turned off completely. Even the emergency lights had gone dim. They tried to offer cash, plead with staff, but it was too late. Everything was prepaid. By me. And now it wasn't. The venue followed protocol. Without an active card, the contract was void. No lights. No staff. No music. It was over. As I sat in my car, engine idling, I thought about everything that had led up to this moment. Years of being overlooked, spoken over, treated like a placeholder in my own family. And finally, I had flipped the script. They had their night ruined. But I had my power back. Suddenly, there was a knock on my window. My mother. She looked worn. Her voice was soft. "David, please. Come inside. Let's talk." I rolled the window down halfway. "Now you want me involved?" She opened her mouth to say something but closed it again. Her eyes watered. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But it wasn't enough. Not tonight. I put the car in drive and pulled away. For the first time ever, I left them behind. By the time I got home, my phone had over 100 missed calls and almost as many texts. Tiffany had left 6 voicemails, each one angrier than the last. At first, she screamed, "How could you do this to your own brother? You ruined everything." Then, her tone shifted to guilt. "Brandon didn't do anything to you. This was supposed to be our night." And finally, the fake kindness came in. "If you wanted to be part of the family again, you didn't have to sabotage us." I didn't respond to any of them. They wanted me to feel bad. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the problem. I felt free. That night, I sat on my couch, wrote a letter by hand, and mailed it to my parents the next morning. Not an email. Not a text. An actual letter, like they used to send me when I was in college, back before they slowly stopped calling me home for the holidays, before they made everything about Brandon and Tiffany. In that letter, I wrote, "Dear Mom and Dad, last night wasn't about revenge. It was about reality. You chose to treat me like an afterthought at my own brother's engagement party. I paid for that venue. I booked it months ago. I arranged the catering, music, and even paid the first 2 installments. Yet, not once did anyone say thank you. At dinner, you humiliated me in front of your guests. You called me a last-minute addition, like I was a burden instead of your son." Then Tiffany chimed in, reminding me I always ruin things. "Well, last night, I simply removed myself from what you clearly didn't want me to be a part of. That party ran because of me, and it ended because of you. This isn't about bitterness. It's about boundaries. Going forward, I won't be part of a family that only calls me when they need money, but never when they need love. You taught me to be responsible. I'm just applying that lesson to myself. Sincerely, David." It was short, calm, and final. I knew when they'd get the letter, probably by the end of the week. But the backlash came even sooner. 2 days after the ruined party, my father showed up at my apartment. No call, no heads up, just knocked on the door like the world hadn't changed. He looked smaller somehow. The anger was gone. In its place, shame. "Can we talk?" he asked. I didn't open the door all the way. "Why now?" "I read your letter," he said, holding it in his hands like it weighed 50 pounds. I didn't know. I mean, I guess I did, but I didn't realize how far things had gone. He looked like he wanted to cry but was too proud to let it happen. "We messed up," he whispered. I messed up. I didn't say much. Just nodded. He waited for me to invite him in. But I didn't. Because sometimes, silence says more than forgiveness. He handed me something before he left. A check, for the full amount I had spent on the engagement venue. It wasn't about the money anymore, but it did show me something. For once, they took accountability. Still, a check wasn't going to fix a decade of being overlooked. And they were about to learn that the hard way. Because while they were busy licking their wounds, I was already building something bigger, something that would finally put me on the map. And this time, I wouldn't be in anyone's shadow. 3 months passed. The dust had settled from the engagement disaster, and the family moved on, or at least pretended to. Brandon and Tiffany downsized their wedding plans. I heard they switched to a backyard ceremony. My father never brought up the incident again, and my mother sent me a couple of lukewarm texts trying to reconnect, "Hope you're well and miss you." But by then, I had already made my move. You see, while they were trying to cover their embarrassment, I was pouring every ounce of my energy into something they never saw coming, my startup. What began as a small logistics software company had suddenly exploded in growth after a viral case study on LinkedIn. We'd landed 3 big contracts, and suddenly, my inbox was full of investors asking for meetings. One of those contracts? It just happened to be with the event venue company where Brandon and Tiffany's engagement had fallen apart. The owner remembered me. "You're the guy who shut the lights off, huh?" he laughed during our first Zoom call. I smiled. Just a budget reallocation. He liked my humor. And he liked my software even more. We struck a deal that gave me back-end control over booking integrations across all their venues. It was a small part of their tech stack, but an important one. And with that, I now had leverage over one of the most sought-after wedding chains in the state. I didn't plan on using it until I saw the wedding announcement online. Brandon and Tiffany had rebooked their wedding, at the very same venue I now had back-end access to. I thought about letting it slide. Really, I did. But then I remembered my father's words, "You weren't even supposed to be there." And Tiffany's jab, "Try not to ruin it like always." So, I picked up the phone. Not to cancel. Not to sabotage. I simply asked the venue owner, "Mind letting me handle the billing and scheduling on this one?" Personal connection. He agreed, chuckling, "Just don't shut off the lights again." I didn't need to. Instead, I quietly downgraded their package, swapped out the premium lighting for basic. Reassigned their catering slot to a different client. And, my favorite part, I reprogrammed the booking system to play the wrong first dance song at the reception. Petty? Maybe. But poetic? Absolutely. But the real play was something they didn't find out about until the night before the wedding. I sent an envelope to Brandon's hotel room. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A contract. It read, "In case you're wondering who's managing your big day behind the scenes, it's the brother you forgot to thank. Don't worry. Everything will run just fine. But this time, you'll remember who made it happen. Congratulations. David." The next morning, Tiffany looked like she'd seen a ghost. Brandon kept trying to smile, but it was clear he felt exposed. My parents looked uncomfortable the whole time, glancing around like they were waiting for something to fall apart again. Nothing did. Not really. The lights stayed on. The music played, just not the way they planned. The food arrived, just not on time. It was a wedding. But it wasn't perfect. And that imperfection? It had my fingerprints all over it. No one said a word. But for once, they all knew exactly who I was, and what I was capable of. And that power? That felt better than any toast or thank you ever could. A week after the wedding, I got a call from my father. Not a text. Not a group message. A direct call. He didn't even bother with small talk. "I don't know what game you're playing," he said, his voice sharp but shaky. I leaned back in my chair, smiling. "No game. Just business. You taught me that, remember?" There was a long pause. "You embarrassed the family." Again. "Did I?" I asked calmly. Because from where I stood, I just made sure the day went off without a hitch. I even took care of the bills. Silence. Then he muttered, "You think you're better than us now?" "No, Dad," I said. "I don't think I'm better. I know I don't belong in a family that only remembers me when it's convenient. I gave you my time, my money, my loyalty, and in return, I got ignored, mocked, and used." Another pause. Longer this time. And then came the words I never thought I'd hear from him. "I was wrong. That's it." No apology. No emotion. Just an admittance wrapped in ego. But that was enough. "Good," I said, standing by the window of my downtown apartment, watching the city buzz beneath me. "Because I'm not coming back." I hung up. That night, I opened a bottle of champagne. Not for revenge. Not for celebration. For closure. For finally being free. Brandon's wedding photos showed forced smiles. Tiffany's perfect day had been laced with subtle chaos. My parents had aged 10 years in a weekend. But me? I felt lighter than I had in a decade. No more waiting to be included. No more proving my worth to people who never saw it. I had finally taken back the power they stripped from me at every dinner, every holiday, every careless comment. And I did it not by yelling, but by making moves they never saw coming. As I sipped from my glass, the city lights reflected in the windows like stars. I didn't need their seat at the table anymore. I had built my own, and it had a much better view.